Wow.
Good afternoon and welcome. If you are just joining us, my name is JoAnna Martinez and I am the chair of the Education Committee for NAACP Lancaster. The NAACP's mission is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and the well-being of all persons. To this end, NAACP Lancaster has collaborated with Franklin and Marshall's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office and their People of Color Alliance to host today's discussion of the documentary film, Knock Down the House, in celebration of Women's History Month. While this is a moderated event, please feel free to post questions for the panelists in the chat box, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can in the allotted time. Our moderator for this afternoon's discussion is Dr. Gretchel Hathaway, Vice President of Franklin and Marshall's College's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. Dr. Hathaway, thank you so much for joining us here today. And we are honored to have several extraordinary women sit on our discussion panel for this afternoon. We have firstly, Robin Goodson. She works for the County of Lancaster and is the Vice President of the School District of Lancaster's School Board. A graduate of Coatesville Area High School, she has an associate's degree in accounting from the Consolidated School of Business and studied psychology at Lincoln University. She lives in Lancaster with her husband and child, who is a student at McCaskey High School. We also have with us Kareena Rios. She is also a member of the School District of Lancaster School Board, and she was elected to that board in 2019. She is currently serving as an immigrant integration specialist with Casa AmeriCorps. A McCaskey alum, Rios lives in Lancaster with her husband and her two children who go to school in the School District of Lancaster. Our last guest is Representative Daricia Parker. She was elected to serve her first term in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in November of 2020. She's a native of Northwest Philadelphia and represents the people and families in the 198th Legislative District. With a bachelor's degree in communications from Bennett College, Representative Parker is expanding upon her respected reputation as a public relations expert and entrepreneur by using her skills to restore confidence in government through transparency and open communication. Representative Parker is also a member of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus and is the chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus Subcommittee on Women and Girls of Color. Dr. Hathaway, you have an extraordinary panel of women today. Let me turn this over to your equally extraordinary hands.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Welcome, everyone. And we have a powerful team on this Zoom right now. And I'm so delighted to see all of us here. And the diversity of this group is amazing, especially for Women's History Month. So let's get started about knocking down the house. I also, by the way, had to run to the closet at work to grab some tissues. Oh, I knew, like, you know, the ending, but you got to grab the tissues anyway, right? All right, so folks, who would like to take this first question? What did you see in the film that sparked an issue or a concern about the current election process that gives you hope for the future? Who wants to take that?
I think I could take that. When you're talking to me, State Representative Daricia Parker, and I'm looking at Congresswoman Alexandra, I look at her and I look at how my race was. I literally did not know I won. There is a Bible verse, those that are last become first and those that are first become last. You know, a few are chosen to lead this call. And I can say that because my race was the mail-in ballot. And when I say I did not know, I really did not know because I went back to working. And I literally, after the election, I literally waited 4 weeks to find out that I was the state representative. So if you're grabbing your heart, you're grabbing your tissue. So, you know, there were men and I beat 3 men. And one of them, after they celebrated on social media, they made nasty remarks as related to me, you know, talking about I need to find another job, I need to find another gig based on all of that. So you're standing for somebody that, you know, we fall down, but we get back up, and you have to keep fighting and you have to keep fighting. And it was a very trying time. I mean, you got to look at the fact that COVID hit us. We were told we had 1, 2, 3 different dates that what the election was going to be based on COVID. You know, you're preparing for it to be April, then then you got a call that was going to be in May, and then you got another call that was in June. So you have all of these emotions that's going on, and you can't, as you say, as a woman, you can't express your emotions. You can't appear too soft. You can't appear too weak. You can't appear too stern. You can't appear this. It was so many different things that, you know, and then imagine you see me with a hat on, because guess what? I had to put it on because during that whole campaign, I wore a hat because the beauty salons were closed. So,
right.
You know, I campaigned in the baseball cap. I had on jeans. I had on sneakers, and you're standing before me as a state representative. And I just tell anybody, you got to have your back office. If it wasn't for some praying sisters, some praying mothers, and a praying friends and family, you know, you got to have your faith. You got to be positive, and you got to have focus. And that's how I ran this way. I did all the negative and the noise and and all of that. I zoned it out, and thankfully my husband kept my head straight, because, you know, some days you just get beat down with things. And I mean, I could tell you some stories and you would just be like, oh my gosh, you're still here and you're still standing. And I'm saying yes. Yeah.
Right. And still wanting to do this good work, right?
Absolutely.
Hard work.
Absolutely.
Good work.
Absolutely.
As John Lou says, make some good trouble, right? Make some good trouble here. Yes, I love it. Kareena and Robin, either one of you, you're both from the school district of Lancaster. What did you think about the election this year? Not just about the movie, but this year in relationship to our school district here in Lancaster. And I really want to know, as a new person here in town, did the elections and the results of them actually help our school district? Did it hurt our school district? Who would like to take that?
I'm happy to jump in. And I was watching the movie, obviously, so inspiring. And I dug out my AOC shirt. So I had to, because it really inspired me. I was just kind of moving back home and working politics, and at that time when she was starting to run, and her campaign energized me, you know, and this was further away. And I think about, as you were talking, the results of the elections, you know, that same year that AOC ran, we had Just King run here in Lancaster County, and I'm still feeling those impacts of losing that election and losing again this year, and still having Lloyd Smucker as our representative, and really not representing us in a way that feels adequate to me or the values that I have as someone who lives in Lancaster County. So I do think about that and those repercussions. But on the flip side, as a school director in the last election, and having the change at the federal level, I think we've noticed that immediately. I mean, I think the mood shifted in our board meetings almost instantly. Like, everybody was like, oh, wait a minute. You know, we can take a minute, we can breathe, we can take stock. How do we get back now? And we could definitely feel that. And I'm sure, Robin, you could jump in and talk about that as well.
Go ahead, Robin.
Oh, sure. So I was going to speak more on the bigger picture of the election, our new president and vice president. So for me, seeing that was a huge, it was more than just a win. It was like, we won, that kind of thing. And I didn't think so much of the smaller little victories, but just for our children in our school district to see someone that looks like them in such a prestigious role was big for me and for myself. It was very encouraging to see her, Vice President Harris. So, and along with our President Biden, and knowing all that he represents. And I feel like even underneath them, things shifted in a major way. Like, we have now our director of, I can't call his name, but Scott Martin, even his role changed, who is really big for us right now. So yeah, that was definitely a shift for me. And I agree with a lot what Kareena said as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Salina, you're representing the People of Color Alliance. That's part of Franklin and Marshall. Can you give us, while looking at that movie or documentary, can you tell us what was life like on the campus? Did you notice anything happening here at the college?
Yeah, I would say that, and I'm also on the school board and ran during the 2016-17 election cycle. And I think running through that and having so much attention on local politics really shifted, like at the time before, I'm sorry, my dog is squeaking. Prior to that, folks didn't pay as much attention to something like a school board election, which made it really easy for any incumbent, good or bad, to just sort of pass through. And my run was one of the first runs in a really long time that had like really energetic debates, contested seats. So I knew when Kareena was running, I was like, better be ready. And we had some light conversations, and it was totally different because it was the cycle after. And I'm really curious to see, because we have some seats open now, how it's going to play out. But on campus, I would say students were really tense and energized at the same time. I think especially during AOC's cycle, I think everybody was paying a lot more attention to some of the small races, which honestly, I feel like protected, because so many people ran with good intentions, protected some of our most important assets like public education, like municipal issues. So I feel I'm always curious to see what would have happened if folks were disinterested like we have been, because we don't learn enough. Our education system doesn't teach us civics in the way that we should. So what would have happened if during the previous presidential cycle, we remained disinterested? Where would we be now? Would we see the successes that we've seen on the more progressive side?
Thank you. Thank you. State Representative Parker. So you said you had to wear a hat. There's so many things we have to do differently, you know, it's just because of the pandemic. And I think that the hurdles for women might have been 3 times harder when it comes to wanting to be a candidate for a political seat, right? So what are 1 or 2 essential things you think that a candidate needs to win an election today? Besides flexibility, because I love the fact that you wore a hat. That is.
I did. And let me tell you something. You got to be careful, because my campaign manager is my younger brother. So I had conversations from both sides. I had my brother, I had my mother, and I have a husband. So anybody's looking at me, I can tell you some stories. So, and one of the things he said to me early on was, just rock the baseball cap, no wigs. We don't want you to look older. You know, so you have to take that into consideration. You have to have your back office in order. So prior to the run in 2020, I knew in 2019, financially sound, I had to have that back office in order as far as the money that it would take, because there was so much money that you put out up front when you're trying to run. And my situation was different because I was a staffer for the seat I ran for. So she retired when I won. But the whole part about this is the whole ethical aspect. So I couldn't tell anybody prior to my run, because I didn't, you know, it's this world right now. You know what I mean? So the last thing I needed was a hashtag, a photo, a videographer, somebody actually saying that I politically engaged during state time. So you think about it, do the math, for 2 years, I never said I was interested. I never said I was running. I never said what my intentions were. So you imagine keeping something quiet for 2 years. And I did not say a word. I did not open my mouth until January 15th. And that's when my leave of absence took place, and I was off and running and talking. And then you had a short period of time. I busted my knee. Then we had to have petitions. So it was, you name it, it happened, and we got through it. You have to have a strong team. The best part about that is the fact, I did say it was my brother. By having a team, you know, I had to relinquish the title of being big sister. And since he is known in political circles, not just in Philadelphia, but statewide, I trusted him to pull together that kitchen cabinet that was going to make sure that I won. You're looking at a woman who originally would have had 5 candidates running against her, and we got it down to 3 men, and I won. And if your back office is not tight, you know, you will not prevail. And a lot of things that's challenging us now is the fact that we have social media. So and my background is PR. So if you let a social media hashtag dictate your race and you don't own who you are and who you want to be, then you're going to let social media dominate your whole wing. So then I made sure with my background of public relations that when I was going to do a story, if I was going to do a pitch, it was going to be authentic. It was going to be who I actually was. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. There were some times that I just wanted to be as real as you possibly get, and then I had to pull back. There was just some times that I wanted to hug and embrace somebody, but I couldn't because of COVID. There were times that I wanted to give you a high five. I couldn't because I was wearing a glove, and then I need that glove to go knock on doors. So I just really believe you got to have your fiscal affairs in order. You got to have your campaign office in order, and your physical health has to be in order. And also that was the other challenge, that making sure, knock on wood, through a whole year no one was sick. No one was sick. No one had COVID. Nothing happened. And you just have to be prayed up. You really, really, really have to be, whatever your faith, whatever your quiet space is, you have to own it and have to be in it all the time. I just feel like as women, there was just so many different things that they said I should and shouldn't do, shouldn't say, what I had to wear, what I had to dress. I couldn't look like a debutante with the big earrings. I had to be conservative. I had to be, you name it, it was thrown at me. And that's it. I mean, you got to go with a person, and then also you got to go with a person who has a winning track record. I mean, he's my brother and I love him, but he has a winning track record. And I knew that if I wanted to win, I better have the best who actually ran the seat that I'm in now for my predecessor. So that's also the things that you have to do. You have to do some back office. You got to do some checks on people, because a lot of people will appear to say that they've done. The key word I've heard a lot is, I laugh at when people say they've done campaigns. I still don't know what that means. You say you've done a campaign. What is your record? Have you won or have you lost? And that's really my message. If you won, I need to be with a winning team. I don't want to be with somebody who's coulda, shoulda, woulda, and telling me something that happened versus what actually had. And that's pretty much my story. I'm a politician. I can go all night, so I'll be quiet because I know other people may want to weigh in.
Yeah, but you walked in the footsteps of these women that were on the show, of these women who knocked down the house, right? You walked in their footsteps.
I did, and you get choked up because you see it, and you're seeing the trail that as people are running and campaigning. And I got kind of like butterflies, because when I'm looking at them, you got to realize COVID was March 15th. So then that happened. Then we have the presidential part happening. So they're like, oh, the presidential candidate, they may campaign with you. Oops, they can't because of COVID. This person's going to go with you. Oops, they can't. Then I end up saying, you know what? The hell with all of this. We want to win. We're going to knock on doors. I'm going to get my, I don't call them seniors, I call my older adults, my mom's sorority sisters, whatever. They had scripts. I had the age of 65 and up making phone calls, and we're going to knock it out the box. And it didn't matter. And that's what I said. I said, I was going to knock on your door. Whoever you were going to see me. And that's what I still do. I still keep that umph in me, and I'm still walking the pavement every day. Well, I try to, you try to get at it. And now that it's getting warm, you got to be careful with these ethical lines. So I'm making sure my staff, and that's the best thing, I've hired, no one on my staff is from my campaign, not one person. Mm-hmm. So they never can say I'm doing something ethical, but I'm smart and strategic. The people who are on my staff came from the areas that I want. So they can't even say that I picked somebody that's not from the district, because that's not actually what happened.
Right. Right. Smart strategic move there. Yeah. All right. So I was thinking about this film, and what's interesting was I didn't pull out my tissues when the woman lost. I pulled out my tissues when the woman won. So did I do that? So we all are shaking our heads. So did I do that? I'm gonna put it on me because, well, it's kind of expected. She's a woman, she lost. Or did I do that because I felt bad for her, but not enough for tears? My tears didn't come until she won. When she was outside, before she even knew she won, because we heard the cheering first and then saw her reaction. Who wants to talk about what they were grappling with during that time?
For me, you know, you always look at the fact that as women, we're always looked at the underdog when it comes to the politics and it talks to the race. As far as state legislator, you know, we're in the minority as it relates to women and especially women of color. So of course my heart went towards the woman that was losing, because at first I thought that was me, you know, so my heart was pulled because wow, that I thought that was me until I got the phone call. And I wouldn't, when I tell you I was not, any other time you answer the phone from your mother, when I tell you that day that I found out I won, I would not answer the phone. I couldn't do it because I said, she's going to give me the news and I'm gonna lose it. So I couldn't talk. And that's the part that pulled at me. Like, I see how she feels, because you put your heart, your soul, your energy, your sweat, you all these different emotions, you know, hormones, everything is just racing. And then to get that, you know, and then to get that news that you lost, I'm crushed. Because I'm saying you're crushed in a moment because you're like, you're lost. But then I'm like, you're crushed because you're looking at everybody who let you down, who lied and said they were for you and weren't for you. And then all of these different things are just pulling at you, just pulling. And then you see AOC, and then she was like me. She didn't know she won. So, you know, she's running all around like, wait, I won. So it's the emotional roller coaster. As you said, as women, we can't do that publicly. As far as the emotional side, I think I broke down. I think the month that I announced, I broke down in front of an audience of like 1,500 people. I mean, I was emotional. It was my church family. My emotions was running high. I didn't know what to do, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had my moment to break down.
Right.
I just wanted to add on just a tad. I felt like the winner won for all four of them. That's what I was feeling. Like, although the other three lost, but I felt like when she won for everybody. Like, one win, we all win, that kind of thing.
Another set of shoes in that office. Yes.
Yeah, it felt really emotional for me too, just watching the whole film back and thinking, well, Cori Bush lost that time, but she came back.
Right.
And the power of women building campaigns and doing the groundwork and saying, that's okay. We got some groundwork. We'll come back next time and we'll hit them harder. Right. And I just love that story and getting to see it kind of unfinished, but knowing now how much further she's gone and how many more young progressive women of color especially, are in Congress right now. It gets me all excited again.
Yes, I see that. Salina, you have a question?
Yes, I'm thinking about what Representative Parker started to talk about, which is the balance. And I sometimes hate the question because the women always get that question, how do you balance blah, blah, blah. But I am curious, and because Robin and Kareena are colleagues, I'm wondering, how do you feel now that you're in it, right? How are you balancing your personal identity, maybe your personal goals, or maybe the things that you ran for versus what you can actually do? Because I think that was a wake-up call for myself, like realizing, wait, there's certain things that I actually can make a lot of progress on, and then there are other things that it takes a lot more work. So I'm wondering, how are you guys thinking about it now that you're in it?
Okay, I'm glad you asked a question. I'm laughing because of the fact that I saw that it's Women's History Month, and the fact that I'm on this panel with you. That was a rule that my husband and I, Sundays is our family day. So I figured that, you know, I came on here as a sacrifice, not getting a side eye from my husband, because I make it Sundays is a no work day. Okay. And those, but again, you know, when you get the call from the chair, you just jump in head first. The balance is the fact that I knew going in the 10 years that the Democrats have been in the minority for 10 years. Okay. So that is already what I needed to control. So what was the thing that I knew I had to do? I knew I was going to have to work on other sides of the aisle. I knew I had to bring home resources to my district. How much resources am I going to have to do the district? Who are the individuals that are making those decisions? Those who I immediately made my meetings with before I got elected. I mean, I made those meetings in like November when we knew we were in and done, and I did those meetings ahead because I didn't want anything coming in this year and then people know. I got earlier commitments, and then as of date, everything has came home. So for me, everything I ran on, I'm still doing. Everything I talk about, I'm still doing. Nothing has changed. And that's really what it is about us. There's a difference between being an elected official and a politician. When you're a politician, you literally think of that word policy and politics, that you have to do a lot of things all the different time. Is this group speaking to this group? Is this woman speaking to this woman? Is this person doing this? How am I affected by this bill voting this way? You're dealing with all of these different things on a daily basis. And then when I come home and I put my key in the door, I'm just Darisha. I'm Darisha to my to my husband. I'm a daughter. I'm a bonus mother. I'm a bonus grandmother. I mean, I'm all of these different things when you're home. So you have to find what is your safe space. My safe space is Sundays because we virtually worship. I do virtually worship two services on Sunday. I don't take any calls, no emails, no nothing on Sunday. I made that my rule because I'm working hard. My day starts sometimes at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm doing emails, reading a lot of emails, sending out, making phone calls or whatever from 6 o'clock in the morning and sometimes until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And that's Monday through Saturday. And Sundays is nothing. So you have to decide, what is your safe space? When is your day of rest? When are you going to be who you want to be? If Saturdays is your day to hang out with the girls, hang out with the girls. Don't second guess it, because, politics, if you think about it by its definition, is a system in which scarce resources is allocated. In other words, who gets what. And you're talking to a woman who serves on consumer affairs, commerce, aging and older adults, agriculture and rural affairs. I just got named to the rules committee, and I'm chair of Women and Girls of Color. So if you hear all of that's a lot for you to even understand just coming in. And even though I was a staffer first, there's things community-wise I'm already used to doing. But the legislative wise, you have to get to know. And a lot of stuff is you're thrown into the fire, which is great because you can make the mistakes as you go along. And a lot of people like the fact that I've been honest. I'm like, look, I'm new as being a legislator. I'm not new as being a staffer, but I don't have the answer for you today, but let me get back to you on it. And just being really authentic is who you are as a person and as a woman. I can honestly say, because it's Sunday, I'm not using any profanity on the Zoom call. So because some days you do get fired. It's that in you and when people give it to you and they lying. On the Zoom, I don't have a poker face. I can't use a poker face on Zoom, and I give it to them. So now I'm known as the feisty rep. I didn't really want to be the feisty rep, but I mean, that's just a reputation. But I'm still polite. I'm still friendly. I still give people their kudos, but when I know you're doing something that's not good and of the disheartening of my district, then I gotta let you know.
Mm-hmm. All right, yes. Be your true self. Be your true self. Robin or Kareena, you want to add to that?
Sure. So I answered that question in a form of who I am, my been through, and merged them all together. So who I am, I'm presently a director of the School Board of Lancaster. And so my mission, vision, and values is to the students, that they are successful. And then, so my been through is I'm big on empowering other people. So I tried to merge all of those things together and say, so I'm sorry. So prior to being on the board of directors, I did parent involvement for over 25 years in the district. So I started off there empowering parents. And I thought, in that, my next step, I didn't think it was going to be school board, like over the whole umbrella, but that's where I was led to go. So at any point, just merging all of those elements together. And there's some other things that I'm not going to, share right now, but and also just being a Black woman in a pretty different place that I'm used to. I was once someone that was on public assistance. I was once the person that was on the other side of being, I was a recipient of all of those things. So I'm grateful for being able to tell someone you can make it, you can take it, and you can be here.
Mhm.
Also that this whole, like, that number 8 really got to me, like, emotionally, and it allowed me to see exactly, not to talk about myself so much, but to where I am today, and that I want to show others, like, people who are not represented at the school board meetings. That's who I came to go reach. I'm not saying I'm not reaching the ones that are already there, but they don't need me as much as that person. So to be equitable, I do whatever I need to do to make that we all play on the same playing field. So that was my share for the experiment emerging all of my life being together.
And you know, and Salina started talking about this. It is hard because the question of, you know, life balance always comes to women. You never hear anybody ask a man that question, right? Right. And we just do it. We just keep doing it and moving it, right? Kareena, you want to add anything to this rich discussion?
You know, I agree with Robin. There was, for me, a focus on students and parents when I was running, at least in my mind's eye of like who I was campaigning for. That's who I was thinking about. And the more I talked with folks too, I realized that there were a lot of people in my community who were special to me who are educators. And I realized that their voice too is, you know, that as representing the district at the board level, we are talking about everyone, and that encompasses our district, and it reaches everyone now, especially that our meetings are live streamed. We get so much feedback from our community, and it's just let me know that, like, I really do have to think about everyone. Yes, the children and the parents and the community is my why, but I have to think about everyone because it's all encompassing.
Well, I'm glad you ended with the concept of women and children. I want to go back to you, Representative Parker. You are you oversee the Black Women and Children's Committee. Is that what it's called? Of
Black Women and Girls of Color of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus.
Awesome, awesome. And then you folks are from the school district, and we have Salina, who's actually from the college. What is it we have to give our younger folks? And let's start out with what you do, Representative Parker, and then what is it that the school board can do in order to get them to not just think about, you know, going and voting, but think about running for elections. Think about that as a path. Representative Parker.
I think you got to have a real conversation with young people. And I think what happens now is sometimes they're too real on social media and they don't realize that hurts them in the long run. And I think that, you know, the whole terminology of social media, it has just taken on a whole world by itself. I was very, very strategic and very authentic about my social media presence because I knew so many people were watching me and waiting for me to do something wrong, saying the wrong word, offending a certain religious group, a sexual orientation group, you name it, I knew. So what I ended up doing, most of the time I would stay off. I would make a very generic comment so I would not offend anybody, regardless of my beliefs or how I felt. I would just be authentic and sometimes just quiet. I would always present myself, and we always present ourselves as women in front of the young girls and just have real conversations with them. So every time they see me, I'm dressed the way I am today. So I can bring them into my circle and we can have a real frank conversation. And they can feel that I'm not there just because I'm elected, but I'm actually a person. It's my job to be a politician, but I'm still Darisha, and I still, you know, love to eat. You know, I still like to have good times, and, you know, just really, really authentic about that. I think for our children, we get to that point because I'll be 50 in November. Some people think because at the age they can't connect, so you're actually talking at a child instead of listening. So for me, I spend my time listening. I usually spend maybe once or twice on Saturdays with a group of young people virtual Zoom, and then they ask me every question out the sun, and I love it because it humbles me. And they hear my energy, and they're like, "Wow, we got somebody that's gonna fight for us." I said, "Absolutely, every day, all day, I have to." And it's a teaching moment. And then we have real conversation because I'll tell them, These are the dollars that are earmarked to come to the Philadelphia School District. Yes, I'm a legislator, I'm one vote. This is what's earmarked, this is what needs to happen, and X, Y, and Z. But we really have real, conversations. And for me, I sometimes feeling like I'm pulled because I was endorsed. You're endorsed by one group of the union from the teachers, and then you have your teachers, and then you have your family, and then you have the school. So then I have to determine, what do I want to do? I want to be authentic, and I don't want them to ever say, oh, Rep Parker was giving me a bunch of bull. Nope. If I don't know, I don't fluff. I don't pull their leg. I don't lie. It's my job to make sure I give them an accurate answer. And what ends up happening is a couple of the parents or friends will gravitate to me, and then I'll end up being a mentor and doing certain things with them. But there's boundaries and there are limits, because I still know they're children. And I know my limits as being an adult that represents them. And I know I owe it to them to do the best job that I can. So we do that by, I don't want to give it away because then everybody will be ready, but we're doing some things at the schools in my district, and they're going to be extremely surprised because they're not going to know when we're coming.
All right.
And that's the best way. That's the best way to do it. You gotta engage in a way that they don't know you're coming. Because when you know they're coming, you know what happens. You get the steak, you get the rose petals, you get the clean. You start smelling all the Febreze and all the pine sol in the air. I say, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do it in a different way so that people can know that you're serious about this work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And from our school board representative, what is it we can do for our children, our youth? Who wants to take it first?
I'll do a stab at it first. For me, so since I have children from the age of 39 to 18, it has been, I know, it has been 2 are bonus kids and 4 so we have a beautiful blended family. But what happens is their friends still remain part of you. So I get to actually demonstrate, because I think that's a big thing. And like State Representative stated, just being authentic when they do see you, and always I make it my business to actually be on Facebook and to see what they're talking about. And if they're doing some reckless things, I'm inboxing them. And so they appreciate those things, because you only chasing those you love. If you're not disciplining them, that means there's no love involved, because I don't want to see them. And then I watched some of my, just recently, one of my daughter's friends, she bought her first home, and she was saying a little bit of reckless things, but she said, and I bought my first home. So I was like, congratulations on buying your first home. And then I inboxed her and said, take all that other stuff off of there. And she was so appreciative. And they all still remain, when they see me downtown or at Park City or where have you, hi, Miss Robin, how and when I was running for school board, they were the ones coming out. They were the ones that were helping me actually get other people, because all of my children have left the area. They left. So they are now my children, and they have remained that. And I just want to keep an authentic relationship with them, make sure that they see me be as real as possible. I don't always show them my bad points, because it's to a minimum. I still want to remain keep that respect line there, because they can get out of pocket, and then you'll have to reel them in. And sometimes trying to get a child back or an individual back is very hard when you've messed up in front of them. So I just try to be very careful. But that's my way of keeping the children. Thank you.
Yes. Kareena, what about you? And especially thinking about, we want these youngsters to think that they can have these goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that something that Representative Parker had said about, the children need to be heard, or they need to be listened to. I think that is something that as adults, sometimes we think we are the problem solvers. We know what's best. We know how we're going to fix it. And sometimes I just think that having those fresh young eyes, it really does lend something to a conversation. Is experience important? Absolutely. But there is something to having that young energy in the room, those new ideas that they bring, that is so important. So I definitely think from a school board perspective, I want to encourage that creativity. And then in talking about getting young people to run for office, I think that's one of the reasons that I ran for the school board seat. My kids are younger, they're both in elementary school. And for me, I felt like maybe I didn't have time to do it, but I was going to try and make time because I wanted young people to see that this was something that they could do, that you do not have to be an academic with kids that are already in college, with a full-time job, or maybe have a different type of career plan. And you're like, I'm going to do school board as like a side thing now that I'm, kind of more accomplished, but you can choose to do it in the nitty-gritty of your 20s and when you're stressed or you have kids and other things, and you can still do a lot of good for your community. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to run, in hopes that I could get other people to do this work too. Yeah.
Thank you. Salina, we have a question that you're going to pull up from the chat.
We have a question from Leah Bacon, who is running for Manor Township Board of Supervisors. And she was interested to hear a little bit more from Kareena and Robin. Representative Parker talked about building their team and how important it is to build a team. But we also know that with smaller municipal roles or like school board roles, it's not a paid position, it's purely volunteer. And she's wondering, what does that team look like? How do you assemble it? And she specifically wanted to hear from Kareena and Robin first, and then Representative Parker, if you want to add anything. Yeah.
Well, in the running, it was when the year we ran, it was no one running against us. It was 5 seats. So actually, Kareena and I were on the same team, and we didn't have to build have a treasurer. We didn't have to have a whole lot of the moving parts that you would if you were running a campaign that you were being fought against. So I think it was different in that way. But I do feel like it's interesting that both Kareena and I are here. I felt like we did pound the pavements. We did knock on doors, and we stayed relational with the people that we knew. And then we would cross over and touch those people that she touched, and she would touch my people. And I don't know much about what our other 3 candidates were doing, but I know because me and Kareena would be in the same place, and and a lot of people knew our faces. And I feel like we remained very relational with people, touching them and being empathetic and asking them questions and allowing them to ask us questions like we were there. Not like we know all the answers, but at least we listened to them. We made sure that they were heard. So unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to say about all the moving parts because we didn't have to do that. The nervousness was still there of not knowing if you're going to make it, because at any time, I guess at one point, someone did come and say they wanted to run from the Republican, some person. But anyway, he didn't get enough to get on the ballot. Well, he was on the ballot, but he didn't get enough to get a seat. But it still was like a little scary time right there. But unfortunately, I don't have the story for you. Maybe Kareena can remember.
Well, I think that's right, Robin. Our race was easier than we initially anticipated. We got fortunate that there was just as many people running as there were seats open. But I did get a taste of organizing for a bigger campaign in 2018 when I was helping. I was just volunteering for Jess King's campaign. So I just knocked a whole bunch of doors and made phone calls and dragged my friends to canvas with me. And they thought we were just going to go get something at the corner store. And I was like, just kidding. Let's just knock, 20 doors before we go get that Coca-Cola. But I think that in terms of like what you need to do, talking to your local party that you feel comfortable, if you feel comfortable going to them, talking to them is really helpful. Other organizations that help me a lot, I would say CASA helped me a lot in terms of talking with people in the community. Anyone who's doing that organizing work, your local NAACP would probably be interested in talking to you. Those groups that are in touch with the community, doing community work, and can get you those connections that matter in the community. And some hopefully you already have, right? Maybe you already are a part of some organizations, and I would just start talking to those close people. My friend was my treasurer, actually. I did create my own campaign because I was worried that I might have to raise money and the Democratic Party wouldn't help us as much because we were smaller. So I had my own treasurer. It was just a friend of mine who went to one treasurer training at a Democratic committee office, and that was it. And he was my treasurer. We raised $25. Running for school board in Lancaster is not that big of a deal, but there are other campaigns where it is harder. I have a friend who's running in E-Town for school board, and she's got to raise some money to do good work there. It's more conservative, and when you're a Democrat, it's a lot harder. So I would say you have good people around you, rally those good people, make sure your supports are there, whether it's your family or your friends, and definitely reach out to local organizations who are doing the work you're interested in.
So before I turn to, I want to ask Salina a question, because she also had a contested, she actually had a contested election. Representative Parker, did you want to add to any of what we're talking about? Since Salina asked you the question as well.
Sure. I think for me, when I keep saying the back office, I knew in mind there was 63,000 residents of the district that resided there. But I also knew during that 63,000 that a lot of them I've met along the way with a lot of the community groups, community meetings. So what happens was I had from 2018 until when I ran, I attended, you name it. If it sounded like it was only 2 people in the room, I attended the meeting. So I literally put that footprint out of there. And that's how you pretty much know as far as your candidacy and who you're going to pull in to be your back office, quote unquote, because you got to have people who already has ties into the area that you're going to, so you don't have to really reinvent or resell yourself. You already have people that's going to be able to speak on your behalf and say that you're a good person and validate how you're going to be. I'm not, but from what I'm hearing, I mean, I'm listening to all of you. I think this school board is just as much a battle as me being state rep. I've been hearing some of these school board meeting stories, and I'm like, my head goes up to all of you. I mean, I can hear it in your voices, and the passion is really, really, it's vicious. It's very hard. It's not easy, you know. So I just, my head goes off to all of them. And also one of the things I think we always forget is make sure if you're able to, if you still have some kind of insurance, make sure you get your doctors and you have your physical, because your body goes through a lot of different changes. And the best thing that happened for me because of COVID was I wasn't going into events and eating food and different things. So I didn't have to worry about, you know, getting sick by anybody because I wasn't tasting anything. So the hardest thing is drinking water on the campaign trail and you have to go back home. Like that is the only thing about, you know, campaigning during these type of times, because I couldn't go in anybody's house, you know, because of COVID. And I just tell anybody, just like you said, family, friends, anybody free that you can have, whether they're 5 years old to 80, is definitely what your back office should look like.
Thank you. Salina, you had a really contested election for you in your position. So can you please talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I think I really related to, especially what some of AOC was talking about with like the insider language, when she showed off the flyer that Crowley had that didn't actually have that much information on it. I think there, especially for school board, because there's like a way that it's been done for so long and a way that it hasn't had a lot of attention, that prior to my running, it was almost like by script, like you put your name in, you're guaranteed on the ballot. Most people, we're a pretty democratic city now, so most people were going to the city Democratic Committee, getting their endorsements, and it was really easy. And then when, I think because of the election with Trump, a lot of people got involved. A lot of people were like, we need to protect our public schools. And then it happened on the flip side too. There were Republicans that were running and hadn't been running before. So it was pretty tough. We had, I can't remember the exact number. I think there were 4 seats and about 6 or 7 people running. And our city Democratic Committee at the time decided to leave one of the seats open and only endorsed 3 people. So I was not endorsed and didn't get the support of the city Democratic Committee. But then 2 people that were running didn't think it was fair. So we created a PAC together and ran together in spite of the city Democratic Committee. And then eventually they did end up supporting us, but creating that PAC was really hard. The whole process is intentionally opaque. So raising money, we were like, how do we do this? How do we report it? Constantly scared we were gonna go to jail. So we didn't report something accurately. But it was a lot of what Robin and Kareena said, like on top of knocking doors, going to visit people, going to as many events as possible. On top of that, it was like managing our own campaign, getting yard signs printed, making sure that any flyers that we had there were no spelling mistakes, getting it interpreted too, so that it was in Spanish and in English, setting up our own website, like all of that stuff we had to do on our own. If you're endorsed by a party, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent, it's a little bit easier because they have an infrastructure. You have access to their voter logs, you have access to like their address list. And it's so much easier. I think we have a totally different city Democratic committee now. And I think a lot of it was learning lessons from like, oh my God, we might actually continue to have contested school board races and we actually need to support them. So I think we just lived through a learning moment and got through it. And it was tough. It was really, really tough. But I think knowing your team, and I totally agree with Robin, like keeping contact with my folks from my old neighborhoods, my current neighborhood, family and friends, they were the ones that helped too. They were the ones getting the petition signatures, carrying, whether or not they really fully understood it. It was just like, this is what we're gonna do together. And they were like, okay, cool. So I think that having all of those moving parts is really important. And it is a lot, but if you're dedicated to it and you're sort of going knowing, then it's a lot easier to take on. You're gonna be tired, but it's worth it.
Thank you, thank you. So this was sponsored by the NAACP, but so before I ask my last question to the panelists, I want to know from you, JoAnna, as you know, really helping out and really organizing our education committee of our NAACP, what is your role now in the future elections, but also educating people about running for offices?
I think that's a really good question, Gretchel, and something that as the chair of the committee, I am working really very hard. Salina is also with me on that committee, and just trying to envision goals for the committee that we can accomplish, that actually accomplish, not to have, you know, it's great to have this vision and this broad like desire to do something great, but you got to take those things that are right in front of you and start to handle those first. For the NAACP, one of the things that they want to focus on, they're wanting to make sure that every child has a free, public, high quality education. We look at things like educational conditions, looking at school zoning, looking at testing and the stakes of testing, looking at textbook material. And I think one of the things that's really important that, you know, as we go into school districts and we start to ask them questions, not just about equity in their policies, but look at your teaching, not just your teaching practices, but what are you teaching? What is your content? And very often now, civics is not taught anymore. Not the way, I mean, I'm going to be dating myself here because we had civics and economics classes when I was young, and they don't teach civics anymore. You know, and I remember before I was going to go to college, I wanted to be a political science major, and it was because of my civics classes. And then I saw Dead Poet Society, and I became a lit major instead. So, oops. But the point is, students nowadays are not experiencing the process of democracy. They don't have any idea anymore what even a representative's job is. Sometimes they can't, I mean, my goodness, sometimes they can't even tell you like what the branches are, and that's a disservice. That's a disservice to all of our students, but particularly to our women, our girls, and our girls of color. They need to be able to see, and I know you said this earlier, Robin, and I was like, absolutely, like seeing Vice President Kamala Harris. I mean, wow, like what a thing to now be able to say. I mean, they had Michelle Obama, who was amazing anyway, but to have this elected position that is, I mean, she was groundbreaking, historically groundbreaking, and to be able to see yourself there that way is, I mean, there's no way to really put into words the impact that has on a young child, a young girl or young girl of color, to see themselves represented in a way that nobody's ever maybe said to them that you could be that thing. But I really do think that as we look to moving into these schools and looking at curriculum, we really need to talk about getting some of these civics classes back, because we having political debates and having mock mock UNs and all of those kind of things prepare students, because what it makes them do too, Gretchel, and I'm hoping you guys will agree with me here, it makes them have to plug back into what's happening right now. And so many kids right now, they're not aware. I mean, they're all like, they're texting and their heads are down and they're not seeing like there are issues that they can impact right now. They don't have to wait till they're old enough to run for office. There are things that as youth they can do right now and can help to have come across. And if they have some of those things, that could hopefully that would empower them and bring them to do that sooner.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see an active, like vibrant NAACP. I've always belonged to my NAACP wherever I've lived, and it's wonderful to be here in Lancaster and new. All right, so last question.
May I say something?
Yes, Robin.
In what you were talking about, JoAnna, about the mock elections and things, I do want you all to know that in renaming our buildings, we actually had each building, the students, they did like a mock election, and they had like little check marks, and then we told them a little excerpt of what was going on, and then who each person has done in the community, who they are like personally, and the children played a huge part in this. Some of them even presented to us on the committee concerning their what they wanted to name their school, but the school took a huge part in this, and this had a major discussion on what a name meant. So I thought that was part of bringing government back into school for me. And I was like, it's a start. It's somewhere we can start. And this is elementary. And I thought the elementary ones, they did a huge, they did probably a better job than the older kids, but they were more into it. It was really great. You'll have to go on to our renaming on our website and look at them. All of the presentations are there. And for the one school, it was mostly all children or students. So just wanted to share that with you all. We're moving along.
Thank you. Thank you. And those little tidbits, you might start at elementary school, it puts a nugget in their minds. It puts that nugget in their minds. All right, folks, we're going to end with this question. It's a 1-sentence answer. And I work at a college, so I know what a run-on sentence is. So it's okay if you use that too. What advice would you give to those who are now thinking about running for office? And since this is Women's History Month, and we just celebrated African American history, especially those two populations, Black history, women's history, what do you think? What is your advice to those who are now thinking about running for office? And I'll start with you, Steve, Representative.
Sure. Loose lips sink ship.
Mm.
And I'll keep that phrase to my belly when you say loose lips sink ships, because just because you may be thinking it, that means other people around you may be thinking it, and then your celebratory and your admiration may be your opponents, and you may be confiding into somebody that's going to be running against you. So until you have those steps in place, you just got to sometimes keep it to the vest. That's why I kept it to the vest, the ethical side. But the other thing, because there was individuals who were buzzing and talking, and they didn't get a peep out of me, and they would try, but you have to stand firm, saying, oh, that's what you heard? Oh, girl, I don't even know what you're talking about, child. I work for the state, and we can't engage in politics. Is that what somebody told you? Oh, girl, they lying. I don't know what you're talking about. That has to be your line, and you cannot move from it. And that's what keeps your everything tight, when you keep your aspirations to yourself. And I think sometimes people think it's the best time to tell a friend or tell a girlfriend, but sometimes as people of color, we cannot hold water. When we get that, oh girl, Robin running. What's she running for? Oh, she running for the school board. What's she? I thought she dropped out. Girl, and all of a sudden you got a text message, Facebook post, and you Robin for you like, wait, I just told one person.
And the world knows. That's right. Kareena, one piece of advice.
Do it, but protect your time. That's what I would say. I think that there's a lot of self-doubt even when you're somebody who's thinking about running for office, you're like, AOC talks about it as well. We just don't see ourselves in these positions of power. So we think, I can't do this. I definitely shouldn't do this. Nobody else in my family has ever done anything like this. Why would I do this? But do it. If you're hearing that little voice saying maybe I should run, just do it. But protect your time, because people are going to try and say, well, she's willing to do this, so let me throw her to the wolves and put her here. And that's what we talk about when we say keeping your friends close. And that's and what I talk about when I say protecting your time, because it matters so much. And if you're going to balance everything that you want to balance and accomplish everything that you're going to want to accomplish, your time is going to be so valuable. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
I'm definitely piggybacking off of everything they all said. So that's part of my sentence. But also, so I'm big on my why. I revert back everything back to my why. And my why is way bigger than me. And it's a real long run-on sentence. So my why is just a lot of things. But I always try to go back to that. And it's always people connected, if I may say.
Yeah. Why you're doing what you're doing. That's cool. Yeah. Salina, since you've run for an election, your advice.
I like the Fannie Lou Hamer quote, "Nobody is free until everybody is free." And I think as a light-skinned Latina, there's stuff that I can do that is bringing up all of the folks that are behind me and in front of me. So I really hold on to that with POC Alliance, with everything that we're doing. It's all of our liberation is tied together.
Great. I will close with this. And I just learned this, in the background, talking with Representative Parker. Vice President Kamala ran for president. We cannot forget that. But she made it to vice president with votes. So people stood behind her then. Let's continue to support our women who are running for election, because for them to get here, they did 3 times the work of any man running for election. So I thank you all for coming. I thank you, NAACP, for sponsoring this program. And I wish you all the best. Did you want anything else you wanted to share, JoAnna? Nope, we're good.
I have a closing. I just have a quick closing. Thank you for everyone. Our goal, Franklin and Marshall's goal, the People of Color Alliance and NAACP's goal was to show a film that centered on women running for office that would resonate with Women's History Month. But we also wanted to foster an opportunity for our community to have meaningful exchange, not only on women's empowerment and what it means to elect leadership that truly represents our very richly diverse country, but more importantly, the deeply personal aspects of young girls, of our own experiences as women. And I think that made this a really powerful presentation. You are all inspirations to the next level, the next generation of young girls and women of color who can now see themselves in some multi-level elected positions working to make positive change. Thank you all so much for providing such an engaging and dynamic discussion. I feel honored to be a part of it. And I mean, we're gonna do it. Women are gonna rule the world. I think we have a lot more to show people. So thank you so much. Good night, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time, everyone. This was wonderful. JoAnna.